Good morning, everybody. How are you? My name
Good
is
morning.
Shannon, and this is Couch Conversations with the Center for Women and Families. I am the sexual assault outreach coordinator on the sexual assault team at the Center for Women and Families. It has been an interesting turn of events over the last couple of months. 2020 has started off rather uniquely, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us want to hit the reset button, right? To start over again and go back to December 31st and try 2020 again. This COVID-19 pandemic has affected us in quite a few different ways. We here at the center work in crisis every single day. There's no day where we're kind of at a homeostasis. We want to get there. We strive for that every day. But this COVID-19 pandemic has really changed the way we do things. So we at the center want to take some opportunity and time to talk to some of our community members, our community partners that we partner with every day. And I have the wonderful opportunity this morning to talk to Miss Amanda. So Miss Amanda, give the people out there a little bit about who you are and kind of how our collaboration, our partnership comes together.
Sure. So I'm Amanda Corizine. I'm the coordinator of Safe Services, our forensic nursing program at U of L Hospital. And I've been doing that for over 10 years now. And we collaborate with the center in a couple different ways. Number one, we have our clinic at the Center for Women and Families, where we see victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. And then we also work with hospital advocates when they come to the hospital to support sexual assault, domestic violence victims at U of L and other locations.
Thanks, Amanda. So tell me a little bit about the sexual assault services at U of L. I know we have a same clinic at the center, and you do some work with survivors at U of L. Can you give a little bit of background, a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we work with victims of sexual assault. We complete what's known as the rape kit or the medical forensic exam, where we can collect evidence, document injuries, photograph injuries, give medications to prevent STDs and pregnancy, and then collect swabs from anywhere on the patient's body. There could be someone else's DNA. So that exam is a pretty in-depth exam that can take several hours to complete. We do that at U of L in our ER, but we have specialized SANE nurses, sexual assault nurse examiners, who come in to do that exam and to work with those patients specifically. So we have a team of about 20 nurses now that we have on call and available to come in to see sexual assault victims. And then they also respond to domestic violence victims to photograph and document injuries.
Gotcha. So a critical work at a time like this. This has changed quite a bit. I think for us, we've definitely seen an uptick of phone calls, and our phone calls are longer now than they were before. Any changes in any survivors? Has the number changed? Has the demographic changed at all that comes into U of L?
Yeah, it definitely has, and I fear that it's partially because people aren't able to get to the hospital or are fearful of coming to a hospital right now.
That's honest.
So,
yeah.
and initially when the quarantine procedures started, I would say we saw an uptick initially. And then we have definitely seen a decrease over the last couple weeks, but the intimate partner violence victims we've been seeing have been more severely injured. And that makes me fear that there are people who have less injury who are choosing not to come to the hospital because of all the COVID-19 stuff. And so we're missing those and only seeing the ones that, more of the ones who require and have to get to an ER for life-saving measures.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest concern. There's no way to know for sure, but I think that's part of the issue.
So since it feels like the services have changed a little bit, right, because of COVID-19. So have you been able to share, or are there ways that we're sharing with the community that, you still can come to the ER, the service is still available? Like, how are you getting the word out? Or have you been thought about making sure that the community knows that the clinic is still open and you're still able to come, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I think the center's done a great job of getting that word out about the clinic. I think From the hospital side, it's a little bit harder just because we have so much coming out about COVID-19 and our procedures there. But we are absolutely open. We are absolutely still seeing patients, and we continue to have 24/7 SANE nurses available. And I hope that people know that they can still access that. It will look a little different. Their hospital visit will look a little different. It just has to right now. But the service they receive will be the same.
So have you changed how you deal with some of your partners, your community partners, your agency partners since COVID-19 has started? Like the quarantine was one thing, like before the quarantine hit was one way of doing service. After the quarantine, it's like BQ and AQ, right?
Yes.
Before quarantine and after quarantine. So can you talk a bit about how some of the partnerships have changed because of that, because of the quarantine, how that's been affecting services and how you do things?
Yeah, so the biggest change is that advocacy services are over the phone, as you know, from the center.
Yeah.
So the SANE nurse is calling the advocate once they're in the room and getting them on speakerphone. We're also, where we can and where it's appropriate, connecting police over the phone instead of in person.
Okay.
So before, there were a lot of people in and out of the room. That's always how it's been in the ER. But advocates came, police came, several doctors and nurses would be coming in. So it's a little bit quieter now, but we are making sure we do our best to connect them over the phone. And I've had an advocate who stayed on speakerphone throughout the whole exam for a couple of hours with us the other day. And while I would have loved to see her in person, I think that was definitely still supportive of the patient in the moment to have them on the phone.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, which walks me into kind of like the next piece of the conversation of like, what kind of policy changes have you seen or had to do, internal and external, based on kind of this quarantine and COVID-19? So for us, implementation, as you just said, everything has gone from being face-to-face to being on call. And that's awfully different and difficult. Used to seeing someone's affect in that moment in space is different and difficult to see the pain in someone's eyes. We be able to translate that and be able to walk someone through that. And so what are some of the policies and procedures you've kind of adjusted since good old, I call it the Rona, after has come through?
Yeah, well, I think the most visible change is how nurses will look during the exam. So, this has caused us to take some extra measures. Number one, nurses will be wearing a mask, and nurses will probably be wearing eye shields. Maybe they're the plastic goggles, maybe they're more official glass looking things, but they will look like they're much more garbed up than before. So there will be mask and glasses on, and there'll be one nurse working with them. Otherwise, we should look the same. But I think when you walk in the ER, to me, that's what strikes me, is that everybody's wearing a mask. Everybody has on eye shields in that ER. And so it feels a little bit scarier. Yeah. Because you're used to seeing people's faces, and it's hard to, like you're saying, over the phone, gauge reactions, but it's also hard to gauge them when you've got half your face covered. So that's definitely a challenge, and it creates a kind of an artificial distance between the clients or the patients and the SANE nurses, and I hate that, but that's just the protective measures that we've had to take. And then the hospital overall has had to tighten up the visitor policy. And so right now, throughout the whole hospital, no visitors are allowed. So if someone comes in for a sexual assault exam, they would not be allowed to have a visitor or guest or family member with them for that exam. Wow. I hate that. The hospital hates that. It's not a move we took lightly, but it's in the best interest of the patient and their family member to bring as few people as we can into that environment. So we've talked to the SANE nurses to say, just make sure we're doing everything we can to connect them with their loved ones in whatever way that feels supportive to them. So we're happy to get them on speakerphone, just like advocates and police. We're also trying to get some video conference abilities in the exam room at U of L in the center, because I think it's just hard to be alone on an exam like that. And SANE nurses are used to being as supportive as possible and wearing the hat of the advocate if they need to. But nothing replaces the voice of your family member or your friend if you really want them there with you. So we're hoping to be able to have some video conference ability, but apparently I'm not the only one trying to get that right now. So we're working on getting the equipment, and I'm hopeful that we'll have that within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah. I think speaking, I have a ton of people in my life who are in the wonderful life-saving medical field. And I think one of the biggest pieces that I hear them say all the time is the adjustment of the interpersonal part of nursing and of health.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of stepping in and being in the gap of that, and that now it's been replaced with a gown and a mask,
Yeah.
shield, and so that leads me to ask the questions about support around that, right? As you are in the thick of it, like there is no question who was on the front line of this. Amanda, you are one of those folks on the front line of that. And so what has support look like for you, from your coworkers to upper management, et cetera? What is that? What does the support look like? What does it feel like? And I don't want to ask if it's enough, because I feel like that's a fair question to ask. So let me rephrase it in this way. Like, what has been helpful as support when it comes to your agency and other coworkers? What is that? What has been the most helpful as support?
The most helpful for support, I think, has been just our ongoing conversations with staff at the center. Honestly, I mean, that I know the advocates are really there for the patients, but they're kind of also there for me.
Yeah.
When I need to debrief and I need to talk about something, and gosh, I miss having them around. So
I know, right? It feels weird. Like even for me, like I've taken over a couple of shifts on Sunday, and I don't have a problem walking to the hospital. That's no biggie to me. But this is weird. Like I'm used to like coming in and talking to people and checking in and hearing stories and that kind of thing, and really connecting with a coworker like Vicky, right? And having these conversations. And it's just, you don't have that piece that's gone. So
yeah, I mean that's the part that's been hardest, but it's been nice to at least be able to connect over the phone. And the hospital has been getting a lot of love from the community. So we've had the ER staff has had a ton of free meals and food dropped off. And last night LMPD staff officers lined out as people walked out of work. And some days I think you don't realize that you're just coping, or it just maybe even feels like a normal day, but then you see that and it just brings tears to your eyes, because I think at the hospital we really do feel the support of the community. And I'm forever grateful for all the ER nurses and the inpatient nurses who are doing such a great job caring for these patients day in and day out. And I'm so proud to work with them. But I think we're doing the best we can, but we're very thankful for the community support.
Yeah, I mean, U of L is a trauma one hospital. It goes down. Like if you want any excitement, you get it at U of L, and it is turned up a little bit more, a lot more now, a lot more awareness of everything and everybody. And you normally like that in a hospital. It's just this is just an unusual, uncomfortable, heightened sense of almost hyper vigilant, right? And it makes sense. It's just, it takes away that that interpersonal love and care that as someone who devotes their life to nursing, and you're never not a nurse. I know there's a double, I know, but there's a time when you don't turn it off because it's a part of your nature, right? It's naturally who you are to be caring, and now you have to. And so that leads me to the biggest question I really wanted to ask, and wanted to give you some space to do that. I am a caretaker. You are a caretaker. 80% of my job is reaching out to communities, and particular communities where the center has been before or needs to reconnect with the community. And so I'm always out in somebody's community center, in someone's high school, middle school, talking to someone in home. That interpersonal connection is huge in my job. I just, it's weird to not email checking on folks. So I'm usually like, let's go to lunch, let's have coffee. And as a caretaker, as someone who is public, we tend to not take care of ourselves. We tend not to self-check and self-regulate, and really take some time for us to stop and slow down. And so one of the things I really feel like COVID has made us do is stop and really begin to reflect. So share with me some of the ways, if you could, that you're actually taking care of yourself. Now, that does not mean sleep. That does not mean run through Wendy's and get the burger you've been wanting for a month. No.
Yeah.
I'm talking about really pausing, self-care, some activities, some mental things, physical things, spiritual things, homeopathic things, the ways you are taking care of yourself during this outbreak and pandemic epidemic with COVID-19.
Yeah, I think some ways that I'm doing it is trying to make time for myself, which is hard enough as a nurse and a mom and
We're
all of that.
Today, Amanda, right?
Yeah, but I follow. I love Glennon Doyle, who wrote a book recently, Untamed, and she talks a little bit about self-care, and then we talk about self-care in terms of manicures and night out with the girls and all those things that we don't have access to right now. But she talks about how that's not self-care. Sometimes is prioritizing yourself and recognizing your own limitations and allowing your own feelings and fears to come through. And so that really struck me that that is self-care, just allowing yourself to feel your feelings. And so days that you're scared, it's okay, and you don't have to just buck up and bury the feelings and soldier through. Those are normal feelings too, and it's okay to have those. So for me, what I've been doing for self-care is I just try and take it one day at a time. I'm a super planner. I always have been. I always like to have a plan, and right now it's really hard to have a plan. And so every time I find myself going down that road, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage? What will it look like when? I just have to stop and say, one day at a time. Well, how are we doing today? We're not going to be able to figure all that out. And so there's a lot of questions about, how am I going to manage childcare personally, and how are things going to look at work in a couple months? But I just truly am trying to take it one day at a time, and that has been the best. And then getting outside is my greatest relaxer. It works even better than a glass of wine if I can just have some time outside.
Right.
So unfortunately, the cold weather this weekend isn't helping, but overall, that's just getting outside for a walk. It is super helpful for me right now, and with my kids to kind of recharge and regroup. But overall, I think I'm trying to do the best we can with it. I think we all are, and just one day at a time. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that is refreshing. I appreciate that. That makes it manageable, because we're managing everything all the time, 8 times a day, and multitasking, having one hand over stirring the pot of rice, trying to feed kids, and the other one and on the phone, trying to manage something and work, and then sending the email all at the same time in front of you, right? But taking it one moment at a time, day at a time, is very good advice and very great insight, Amanda. Thank you so much for that. I thank you. I really, really do. I thank you for being able to put a name and a face to what this looks like in this new day and age of everything being virtual. If you could leave us with some words of wisdom or hope, or things you want the community, the public to know about the job that you're doing, or whatever the case may be, what would that be as we wrap up our conversation?
Yeah, I would just say, I know it's a difficult and scary time, but if you are experiencing domestic violence or sexual assault, we are still here, and we will still work our hardest to do our best for you and get you to safety, and that remains our goal. And if you're brave enough to come to the hospital and see us, we will meet you there with open arms and a mask.
Must say the mask part, because
yes.
Unfortunately, that is the day of the day. That is the call of the times. We will meet you there with the mask. Thank you.
That's right.
That's the most important part of the conversation. Thank you so much, Amanda, for spending your time with me this morning. I am so glad that you were able to share. And I know that we are thankful. We are grateful for your service and the time that you spend, the time you have spent, pretty much as a public servant doing the work of those who don't really want to do it. Let's just be honest. And there is a special gift that you have, a special touch that you have, a special spirit that you have to walk beside those in their most vulnerable, uncomfortable, hurtful, uneasy. There's a couple other exploits I could use, but I'm not. And do it well. And that is a skill and a gift that not everybody has. So, man, I thank you so much for your sacrifice every day.
Oh, thank you, Tracy.
So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today for this edition of Couch Conversations with the Center. And thank you so much, Amanda, for stopping by and talking to us. So we will see you next time with another community member to share about this pandemic and how things have changed. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.